Porter is Canada's fastest growing airline and my personal favorite, but how good can they be, or are they actually a bad airline? Well, today I'm going to be showing you two separate flights where one is on their turboprop and the other is on their jet, so you'll be able to get the full experience.
So now I've definitely flown Porter before, but the one time I did it on video I was almost arrested, and the other time was on their jet. So this is the first time we're actually going to get a true Porter experience. Now online, none of the things say that they're Canada's best airline, but in my opinion, they're my favorite and I think they're the best. But obviously some people have had bad experiences and it could always go one way or the other. But so far, when I was doing the online check-in last night, things got off to a pretty good start.
After getting to the website for check-in, all I had to do was type up my confirmation number and last name, confirm my baggage type, pick the seat that I wanted, skip any more add-ons, and after confirming I had nothing dangerous, I was all checked in and ready to go.
So now that we're all checked in, the next thing we have to do is actually head inside and grab the boarding pass, and then we can see what Porter is really like. And hopefully today they're going to be good because they are my favorite airline. But obviously there is the potential that they could be bad today as well.
So after making my way inside, it appeared that my flight was still on time, so I took the elevators down to the ground floor where I'd make my way through a tunnel into the main terminal.
And this is probably the only initial downside, is that it is such a long walk in this tunnel to actually get to the airport. And that's because this airport is on an island and the only way to get there is by this tunnel or a ferry.
And since it was a crappy day, I elected for the tunnel, which takes a couple of minutes from one side to the other, and soon enough I was inside the main airport. Making my way to the departures level, this is where you can check in, drop your bags off, or get your boarding pass. So I managed to get mine on my phone before heading through security and getting a stunning view of the Toronto skyline.
Now the best part about flying Porter, especially from downtown Toronto, is one, it is right downtown. Pearson, our other airport, is like 40 minutes outside the city. And on top of that, from getting here, it was like 10 minutes from arrival till through security, which is unreal. And because it's a small airport, there's not nearly as many people and it's not nearly as congested.
So now making my way all the way down to the ground floor, I was now in the main terminal for international departures. As you can see, there was a ton of seating area for passengers to relax and do work. Along with this, there was also a duty-free, a restaurant to get food, a store to buy snacks or other souvenirs, and close-up views of all the planes that I was going to be flying on in just a bit.
But anyways, now that we're here waiting for our flight, I thought that now would be a great time to tell you guys a little bit more about Porter, just in case you have no idea who they are.
Right off the bat, Porter is the 19th smallest airline in all of North America, only having two different types of aircraft in their fleet, but despite this, they've won Traveler's Choice Awards with a rating of 3.5 stars, but tons of mixed reviews. On one hand, people have called Porter a nightmare, saying to not fly them whatever you do, and that Porter Airlines is a tale of endless delays and disappointments. But on the other hand, people rave about their staff, saying they've had great travel experiences with them and that they're a great airline which they'd fly with again. So it's gonna be super interesting to see what they're actually like. But first, I needed to head to the boarding desk to confirm my travel documents.
Hi there. Thank you. So for some reason they had to double check my passport and everything went fine, but then they had to tell me, oh, the plane is full. So I'm pretty sure I still have my seat and that I wasn't booted to another flight, but fingers crossed.
And it turns out that things were slightly delayed, but soon enough it was time for boarding. So let's see if we're able to get on this flight or not.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Just give me a moment.
Hi there.
Boarding card.
There you go. Ah, wrong one.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Making my way through the plane, I was greeted with Porter's standard 2x2 layout before finally making it to my seat for today's flight. Right off the bat, the first thing I did was the comfort test, which was pretty decent, but the seats were definitely stiffer than I recall.
Maybe things are slightly different than I remember.
Up next, I decided to check out the seats some more, starting with the armrest, which didn't have a button to recline, and making my way to the legroom. Things were a little bit tight, being only 5'8", but definitely more than acceptable. Moving on to underneath the seat, there was plenty of room for any bags, but since this plane was only a turboprop, the overhead bin should have been tiny, but surprisingly it was actually quite large. Up next, I decided to check out the reading lamp and air conditioning, which was thankfully working, before noticing that this plane was actually super clean in areas which are traditionally quite dirty. But anyway, since I was in the window seat, I decided to check out my view, which came with 2 windows, and I was right next to the engine, which wasn't ideal. But as for the rest of the features, I'll be showing you that once we're in the air, because now that it was 10:16, we finally began pushing back from the gate to begin taxiing. For the first flight of the day, I was going to be flying roughly 1.5 hours from Toronto to New York City, and soon after making it to the runway, it was time for takeoff. Now that I was in the air, I think it's time to explore the rest of the features, starting with everything inside the seat pouch. Up first was the safety pamphlet, which came with all of the usual things you would come to expect, but up next was the Reporter magazine. Inside, I was able to find all of the information about this aircraft and the one we'd be flying right after this, which has Wi-Fi, but unfortunately this type does not. Making my way to the bottom of the page, I was able to see what kind of complimentary food and drinks would be served on this flight, which was perfect timing because I noticed the crew coming around for the in-flight service. Getting myself prepared, I opened my tray table, which was definitely on the smaller side of things, but I decided to get a shortbread cookie and apple juice for this flight. But anyways, at this point, my back was actually starting to get quite sore from the seat, so I think it's time we check out the bathroom. Now, since this was a turboprop, I wasn't expecting much because things were very small and extremely tight. But one of the things that I found to be super weird was that there was no water for washing my hands and merely a bottle of soap. But anyways, making my way back to my seat, I noticed we had begun our descent into New York since this was such a short flight, and before I knew it, we were coming in for landing. And remember, this was only the first flight, and now it's time to fly on Porter's jet to see which is better and to give you the full airline experience. Also, ignore the fact my ex-girlfriend's in it because I filmed it 7 months ago and we've broken up since then.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Just get
Oh,
your
sorry about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's kind of important there.
It is, yeah. Thank you. Have a good flight.
Thank you, have a good one. I am incredibly excited.
For today's flight, me and Maddie were in seats 3A and B in Porter Reserve, where the first 4 rows are dedicated to this type of ticket. After boarding the plane, we were immediately greeted by friendly flight attendants before getting seated. What makes Porter's jet so different from other airlines is that they fly in Embraer, which is a 2x2 for the entire cabin, unlike the others, which is normally a 3x3. And after getting comfortable, the Porter hospitality began.
Menu for today's flight.
Thank you.
Menu for today's flight.
From flight to flight, Porter's menu will change, but for today we had the option of ham and brie croissants, tropical salmon poke, a cheese and fruit tray, or a soba noodle bowl, but I'll be showing you just what we got in a few minutes. The first thing I noticed about the seats was just how much 36 inches of legroom actually was. And for someone who is 5'8", I could completely stretch out as much as I wanted. Underneath the seats was a ton of room for bags, which was nice to see, and even the overhead bins above were able to fit all kinds of carry-ons. Now, since today's flight was quite empty, before we knew it, the gate was detaching from the plane and it was time for pushback. For today's flight, we'd be flying 4 hours and 14 minutes across Canada from Toronto to Calgary. And after making our way to the active taxiway, soon enough, we were ready for takeoff. Now that we were in the sky, I decided now would be a great time to show you guys around the seats some more. Right off the bat, I was extremely impressed by how incredibly clean the cabin was, even in places that were traditionally quite dirty. On the overhead above, I found the reading lamp and air conditioning, which was definitely on the smaller end, but it still got the job done just fine. Making our way back to the seat, I found a double folding tray, which also fully extended, which was great to see. The pouch down below was also a pretty good size, which had things like the safety pamphlet, Reporter, which is a magazine all about Canadian locations and features of the airline, and also a sheet on how to connect to the Wi-Fi. On most airlines, you need to pay for Wi-Fi, but not on Porter. Movies are fully complimentary, and to get access to the full flight Wi-Fi, all you need to do is sign up for their VI Porter loyalty program, which is completely free. And I'll be honest, I am a total nerd and I need fast Wi-Fi, and I'm happy to say that Porter's Wi-Fi was just as fast as something you'd use at home. But now it was time for the first meal of the flight.
This is your appetizer. This is your appetizer.
Thank you.
Inside the eco-friendly box came with eating utensils, taco dips, biscuits, and crackers to start off, which was incredibly delicious. For drinks like wine, Porter always serves in glassware, which felt incredibly high-end. And for all the health nuts out there, you could even get ginger immunity shots fully included, but now it was time for the main dish. For lunch, I decided to go with the ham and brie croissant, while Maddie got the tropical salmon poke bowl, which was truly incredible.
So what were your thoughts on the food?
It definitely did not seem like airplane food. It felt more put together, fuller. It was good. Nothing really tasted like refrigerated for 7 days, so I was impressed.
I think another thing to add is most of the time when you're on a plane and you have airplane food, for the majority of the time, it's pretty unhealthy and you feel kind of crappy after.
I also like that they had greenhouse juice options, which I've never had on a flight before. I think it's like Toronto based, so maybe that's why it was on there, but so good.
Now, after finishing lunch, it was time for the bathroom tour. If you're any taller than 5'8", you're definitely gonna have to bend down in this one, but besides that, everything was super clean with all of the usual essentials you'd come to expect. Heading back to my seat, I realized there were a few things I forgot to tell you guys about. First off, each seat comes with 2 power outlets, which is a rare occurrence these days, and even small hangers on the sides of the seat for coats or hoodies. In terms of overall comfort, I definitely put these seats as one of the comfier economy ones I've sat on during my travels, where they come with a pretty standard pitch when reclining too.
And at this point, I'm sure you're probably wondering one of the most important pieces of information. How much did this flight actually cost? Well, for this route in particular, from Toronto to Calgary, for Porter Classic, it starts at $199. But for Porter Reserve, which is basically their premium, economy, first class, whatever you want to call it, costs $399 Canadian. Even if you're not flying Porter Reserve, Porter Classic is just as good, and for $199, that is an unreal price. Especially considering you still get premium snacks, you still get glassware drinks, and a lot of other food options as well.
And speaking of snacks, just before coming in for landing, the flight attendant came around with a basket full of snacks. Maddie decided to go with a mix of nuts while I went for the banana bread, which was absolutely delicious. After finishing up, we realized we were now starting to get close to Calgary, and before we knew it, we were coming in for landing.
So now the big question remains, is Porter actually good, and are they worth it?
Well, as for their jets, I think it's an amazing experience, but their turboprops are definitely starting to get a bit dated, but I still think they're solid overall. But anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to watch this one next, where I flew America's best and worst airline.